Recently, the Actors Lounge caught up with Brad Pitt and Kate Blanchett on the set of The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. Let's see what they had to say about the film.
He talked about it in terms of a man's life and a man and a woman's life, and the people they meet along the way, and the people who leave impressions on them, and add to the shaping of who they are as individuals. And from there on, from there we went.
So, what is the film focusing on?
It focuses on the universal moments, and they seem monumental on the inside as far as first loves and loss, but it's the thing that everyone experiences and carries with them.
So, what do you feel was the goal of the film?
The goal was a real openness and an honesty and taking responsibility instead of taking responsibility for one's choices. Whatever fate brings you, you make your choices from there.
So, what's the story about?
In the F. Scott Fitzgerald story, you have a man who's born old and is aging backwards. And in Eric Roth's interpretation of it, there's a young girl who becomes a woman who plays a big part in his life and who he becomes, and has a big influence on him, and that's Daisy. And what we see is two individuals that meet periodically at different times, and one may have an interest and be ready to get there, but the other one's not, and so on and so forth, till they get to a point of a certain age of understanding and a time of togetherness. It's extraordinary what they've done, and the level of detail in they've recreated here with hair follicles and pupils dilating and pores and saliva, and it's really incredible detail what they've done with how they've subverted the technology to make this look actually quite real and quite seamless.
What was it like to work in New Orleans?
New Orleans was incredibly special, and it permeates through the film. It was a serendipitous move when the script was moved to New Orleans. It gave the film such a unique and it seems plausible. In New Orleans, it seems plausible.
So, tell us about the director.
He brought everything. Listen, as a fan of films, I consider this a masterwork. You really feel a sculptor's hand when you see this edit. It's something incredible. He's been on this thing for 5 years or so daily, and he's put everything he has into this one, and you feel
So,
it.
Kate, tell us a little bit about the theme of the movie.
For me, apart from the unusual fact that you're dealing with an everyman, but someone who ages in reverse, I think it deals with really big things that I think when you normally, in the language of cinema, get relegated to cliche. But knowing that David Fincher was going to look at it, the man hasn't got a sentimental bone in his body. Fincher talking about love, Fincher talking about longing and yearning and hope and possibility and birth and death, then you're in for an interesting ride, I think.
So, what would you say is so unique about this film?
The thing I find really special about the film is, yes, you've got Daisy and Benjamin, and our names are above the titles, and so you think, well, at some point there's going to be a connection. But there's really powerful points of connection for Benjamin, which seem at the time like inconsequential. There's a woman who teaches him to play piano, and her death has a really big effect on him. That's where it's really true to life. I remember something that my high school teacher said to me, which was a throwaway comment, which has stayed with me for all of my life. I've been in therapy for years over it, but it's not always those momentous things which ultimately become turning points.
What do you like about David Fincher's directing?
What I really admire about what Fincher's done with the film is that I think in lesser hands, people would have gone to town with the technology. And oftentimes people make films like this, not that I've ever seen a film like this actually, to experiment with the technology, whereas he was absolute master of it and in control of it and was really judicious about how he used it. And it's incredible to have be working with prosthetics as thin as they were so that they don't actually mask emotion or what an actor can bring to a role. But David also really trusted that the actors would, rise to the level of that and provide, the internal stuff and the physical transformations that have to happen as somebody ages. He is actually an incredibly subtle filmmaker. What I love about the film is that Benjamin is put on the doorstep. He's born, and his father abandons him on the doorstep of an old folks' home who's run by a black, who's a fantastic woman with a big heart, black woman who's played by Taraji Henson. And so this black woman takes in a white baby and becomes his surrogate mother. And Daisy's grandmother is living in the old folks' home. So their relationship is born in a place where people are on their way out. So they it's already couched as death as being an ordinary part of life. I think timing's everything in any relationship, any friendship, any working relationship, any love relationship. And certainly for me, that was, if I had met my husband 4 years before, it wouldn't have worked. We found one another at the right time. Brad was incredibly, I think, watching it, and very zen about and like Fincher, was really judicious about what he brought to the role. And I think that, in a way, that the synthesis between what Brad did as an actor and the technical aspects of the film mean that a lot of the work is really invisible. And I think that's a testament to a great performance. I don't want to go to a film and see someone's homework. I want to be transported into the world of the character and think this life could not be any other way. This is the way this man is, and I think that's what Mr. Pitt has done. I mentioned to David, is there any way that I can, my voice can be part of the young Daisy, so that, I can be involved in the character development from go to woe. And I know that you wanted to be, very much a part of Benjamin across all ages, because that's the challenge as as an actor. And normally we think, well, no, the technology will take over, but David was really, really performance-focused. And I didn't once feel on set limited by the technical restraints of the film, and I think that was a fear going into it. It always felt like that stuff was in service of the story and of the characters.
Yeah, and it actually did. It gave us that opportunity. This technology gave us the opportunity to see it from beginning to end, instead of having to plug in different actors at different ages.
I mean, my husband saw the film for the first time, having not really been involved in it, and saw it 2 days ago, and he just said that is a really well-directed film. And I think you realise how many films are actually edited into existence, whereas David has had, I don't know how he's done it, but he's kept this entire life and every single detail in absolute precision, but he's never lost the heart of the film. It feels like it's it's hard to say, because I don't know David as well as you do, but it's got a lot of heart and seems pretty personal to me.
So, tell us about the character that you play.
The character I play is named Queenie. And Queenie, to me, is the embodiment of unconditional love. She is a woman who takes in the unwanted. She runs an old folks' home, and unfortunately, what happens to a lot of elders is, people throw them out to the pasture. They don't come and visit, and they send them to these homes. And she takes them in, so she's sort of used to taking in the unwanted, and here this baby is left on her doorstep. And he's full of life, because she's surrounded by death, because, unfortunately, the elders are dying. And she's able to look past race. It's early 1900s. She's able to look past that he's white and he's odd looking. But what she does understand is that he needs love too. And she's there. She doesn't think twice about taking him in.
So what's Benjamin like?
He's the size of a baby, but he looks like an old man, if you can imagine that. He's born in his 80s, and he's aging backwards. And initially, when she brings him in, that's strange. So she has the in-house medic look him over, and the medic is like, oh, he's dying. His bones are ossified, he can't see, but something inside of her says, this baby is special. Something about this baby is special. She knows it. Everybody's telling her, give it away, and she won't. So they have a very spiritual connection, she and Benjamin.
So how does Queenie handle Benjamin aging?
Queenie, watching Benjamin age backwards, I don't even think it was something that she really paid attention. I mean, it's a matter of fact, and that's what I love about her. It is what it is. You can't make any excuses for the cards that you've been dealt. You just got to make the best of it. And I think she was the perfect mother for him, given his circumstances. And the revival tent scenes, and in the revival tents, period, you know, there's miracles are supposed to happen. And the humor in this is that Benjamin is gaining his strength. You know, he's aging backwards. So this is probably the point in his life where he would actually be able to walk. But it looks as if a miracle is happening. That's the humor, because, you know, he's gonna walk eventually because he's aging backwards. He's getting his strength. But the true miracle is that the preacher lays hands on Queenie, and she's able to give birth because she was barren when the film opens.
What do you think Brad Pitt brings to the film?
I think Brad Pitt brought, he has this quality of intrigue. You can't take your eyes off of him. He brought a handsomeness to an odd-looking creature. I mean, he makes aging look beautiful, if you will. That's what he brings. God, he pulled it off again.
And what's your opinion about the director, David Fincher?
David Fincher brought realness to this film. He made it real and believable. I mean, if you approach a film like this with too much mystery and magic and fantasy, you kind of lose the audience. They kind of go, I don't believe this could happen. But he brought such a reality to it that I think the audience will be able to suspend their disbelief and go with the story.
So, Julia, tell us about your
The
character.
character I play in this story is a girl called Caroline. I should say a woman called Caroline. And she is Daisy's daughter. And all of my scenes take place in the hospital in New Orleans as Katrina approaches.
What do you think the point of the movie
I think
was?
what all of us wanted was to show a modern, somewhat imperfect relationship. And what is revealed is the secret of this great love that she had. And I think that is something that Daisy has held back out of nobility. As a parent, she makes a choice that she is not going to tell her child, your father was not the great love of my life. She makes the choice that she's going to allow her child to grow up understanding that she came from the greatest love, which is what we want our kids to know. I think all children want to know that about where they've come from.
How do you feel about Cate Blanchett's performance in the film?
She's just incredible. It was such a, I can only imagine that it was the most exhausting role, because those guys, I think I'm the only one in the cast who didn't have to do aging makeup. I kind of like saying that, yes, I had hours of aging makeup, but that's actually me. That's just me. So, after having been called to the set at 3 in the morning or 4 in the morning, waiving turnaround, which is what actors have in terms of the gap between a shooting day, so that the film could actually be done. And then delivering a performance that was so exquisitely thought out. Her voice changes, her dialect changes as it grows. She goes from a period sound to a modern sound. She ages physically, how she walks, how she moves.
And tell us how you felt when you first saw the film.
The first time I saw the film was before I even shot my sections, because David had shot the rest of the film and cut it together so that he could have a better sense of how we do the bits that get slotted in as the more narrative pieces. So I actually got to see the movie unravel in this very pure way without my bits in it, and then I got to see the movie again with my stuff in it.
And tell us who you are and what
My name is,
characters that you play.
Thomas Button, and I am the biological father of Benjamin, and I abandoned him for for reasons that you'll understand in the film, and you'll either forgive or not forgive. But luckily, Benjamin, by the end of the movie, lets me off the hook.
I play Tizzy, and I'm responsible for helping to raise Benjamin, and along with Queenie, and give him the tools that he can use throughout the course of his life.
I'm Jared Harris. I play Captain Mike, and I play sort of Benjamin's wayward uncle who leads him astray and shows him the sort of the adult pleasures of life and really takes him out into the world.
And for each of you, what were some special parts of the film?
For me, I mean, to work with Brad, you know, and Finch was something I've always wanted to do. And so there was the scene where I had the most lines was my favourite scene. but there's a scene when I tell Brad about his family, and I'm kind of sitting in a hall, and it was, because obviously I'm not from Virginia, and it's quite a lazy scene. I'm just sort of talking about his father and about me and about my wife, and it's really felt comfortable and lazy because I was sitting down and just telling him, and I'd worked quite hard on the accent, and I knew that I got that right. So I really enjoyed those 2 days where we did that, where I just got to... By the way, I talk and Brad listens, but then in the film I go, my name is... And it cuts straight to Brad just nodding like that. But it was fun to do that. It was fun to work with Brad for that period of time.
I'd have to say that the scene that stands out most for me is when we actually find Benjamin on the stairs.
I saw that.
And I think on a certain level, just the chemistry between myself and Queenie and getting to experience that, and then actually finding the baby, it felt, and it actually, that was my first day of shooting, so there's something about it that was special all around for me. It was freezing outside. We're like, you know, crawled up against a heater between takes, but it was just a special night and a special scene, and the fact that it was actually finding the baby, something that kind of helps kick the story forward, that it felt important on multiple levels.
Well, I'd have to say probably my last scene in the film, because that was the scene that all my wife's girlfriends were most envious of, because I got to die in Brad Pitt's arms.
He did. So did I. He mucks about a lot, he plays a lot, and even though we were just saying it, I know he does a lot of preparation, but it seems very effortless, and on set he's great fun, and him and Finch get on great. So even though you'd think that obviously it's a huge movie with very big themes and very important, the making of it was a lot of fun, and light and dexterous and humorous, and so that, for me, that's what Brad brought to it, was the unease and the gentleness.
I would say a sense of ease, peace, and acceptance of the circumstances and things that are to come, and a curiosity also.
I think tremendous relaxation, confidence in himself and his ability.
I think it reinforces some things that we mentioned earlier, and things that your parents or older people kind of tell you, which is seizing the day, living each moment, and living life to its fullest. Because in the end, all you really have is your experiences, but even that, you're gonna have to let go of.
I'd say probably made me more inquisitive about my my mother's life story and other people's life story of older people around me, that you're ignoring a tremendous arc of history when you look at them and you don't ask them what it was like, how they grew up, what the world was like when they were young, because it changes so much. And this story goes from the end of the First World War to Katrina hitting New Orleans, and that's the scope of a single life. And people say life is fleeting, and yet the scope of a life can bridge that kind of experience in the world. History, it's just extraordinary.